Hi, everyone. Thanks again for stopping by the Saltivation team. Today, you've got Tram, Alex, and Meredith. And we thought we would talk about something that we haven't really talked about much or spent much time on, which would be marketplace, the marketplace rules, when those take effect, what that means. Because we're still actually getting a lot of questions on what is a marketplace and, a lot of surprised clients when we identify kind of this concept. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about that. So I don't know, Alex, Tram, want to kick us off?
Sure, I'll jump in here. So yeah, in terms of a marketplace or a marketplace facilitator, I think almost all states that passed a Wayfair rule also followed um, with enacting like a marketplace facilitator or provider law or rule that says if you are considered a facilitator of a sale via a platform, it could be just a um, online website or any kind of medium that facilitates a sale between a purchaser and a seller, you could have some responsibilities in terms of sales and use tax. So I don't know in terms of like the specifics of each state, but I mean, all states, based on what I've seen, they define what a marketplace facilitator is a little differently. And then also what they're required to do, how they're required to register and report sales kind of varies. So it is actually a little tricky in terms of figuring out if you know, do fall under these rules and what you're supposed to do. So I think that's where it gets, complicated. Um,
Yeah,
so
it's been interesting navigating the nuances of this recently because I think when this first came out, the states scored a really big win with Wayfair, right? So while they're riding high on that wave, they're like, let's get marketplace through. So conceptually, it was very similar to the Wayfair principles. Um, And I think now that enough time has passed, we've come to accept certain marketplaces, like I'm going to just mention some of the huge ones, like Amazon or eBay or Etsy. Right, those are like the three big ones that everybody usually references. I think we've come to kind of accept them and their platform as a marketplace for purposes of this burden shifting that occurs. But what's really been interesting recently is seeing how some other businesses are being captured by these relatively broad marketplace definitions, um, where the activity, at least in the old days, really looks like just potentially um, some sort of commissioned sales activity, right? You're kind of finding a buyer, finding a seller, bringing them together. But under the rules, your activity could potentially be um, deemed a marketplace. So it does. The devil really is in the details on this, and I think some clients have been surprised a little bit that they fall under the definition, because practically speaking, the business activity doesn't really feel like it should.
Yeah. So, one I would say, one of those non traditional, right? Maybe marketplaces. I think a long time ago, early on, we worked with a company who kind of facilitated a website that you could use to host kind of the back end of your like marathons, your races, your kind of Ironman competitions. Sign that up. That website would collect all of the payment and whatnot. People would come there. They knew to check that website. Um, and you could sign up through them. That website would take the payment and then kind of like push it to the Joe's Denver Marathon. Um, but that, under some of the definitions, is a marketplace. So that's kind of one of those non-traditional, such that, right, I'm not selling, my custom coffee mugs on Etsy, and that's a big one that, um, Yeah, that you use to kind of like hawk your homemade goods or stuff you want to resell, but would still be deemed a marketplace. They would have an obligation to collect remit sales tax, um, and kind of look at that taxability of like, well, does that state tax sign up fees for marathons? And kind of
Yeah,
track those.
and I also think kind of like what you're selling too, right? Is going to be tricky. And do you have the requirement? Like, if you are a marketplace, did you exceed like the Nexus rules, and how does that apply to how you're facilitating the sale? I think we probably worked on that project together, Mayor, because I do remember us looking at like even amusement charges because you're signing up for a run. Is that an event? Is that something subject to sales tax? And then, of course, they sell other things like T-shirts and apps, which get complicated too. So I think in terms of understanding the different rules, how it applies to whatever market you're facilitating is super important, because then thinking about, hey, if it's your Amazon, of course people realize like that is a marketplace, but they don't think about like facilitating a race or facilitating an event like a concert, right? You're buying tickets to a concert, and if you're the facilitator, you might in some states be considered a marketplace.
Yeah, so I think kind of the moral of the story, and by way of looking at your marketplace rules, is do you collect money on behalf of someone else? And can someone come to you to buy something or give you money that then you are remitting elsewhere? Kind of at a fundamental level to kind of trigger that thought of, do we fall within those marketplace definitions? So
Yes, and
on
especially if you maintain the books and records. I mean, that it gives you the key information you need to either charge or, you know, collect taxes based on whatever information you have. So all those things do come into play.
Yep. So on that note, we'll leave you there with marketplace facilitators, things to think about. So, if you have any questions, keep following us or let us know. We're happy to have a talk. Thanks everyone for stopping in.